American election cycle is as perpetual as the Indian election cycle. So come 2022, and they're already talking about the midterm elections. Of course, it will be a little later in the year, but it is going to be in 2022. So I think it's the right time to start talking about it and to talk about the American election cycle and all things American, including Biden Kamala duo and the things that are going on in the American politics. We have Shri Vibhuti Jha as ever, so please do subscribe and please do go to our description to support us and to follow us. Namaste and welcome to
Namaste.
today's show, the Wednesday 10 p.m. show with Shri Vibhuti Jha. Welcome, Vibhuti ji. How are you?
Namaste and greetings to
I
everybody. I'm
have
doing very
one
well.
very straight question to you.
हाँ बोलिए साहब.
Does America also have a Papu problem?
आप मगर मैं किस if I do reply to this, maybe YouTube and Twitter both will ban me. So we are living in a very dangerous era. Yes, US has a serious problem of its own. And you are talking about election cycle. It is the world's two prominent democracies are perpetually in election cycles. So the moment the president wins the election, the plan for the for the winning back the second term starts. Everything is driven from that point of view. So yes, 22 election has been is going to be very fascinating because in a very interesting situation for Republicans to win, they have to just win 2 or 3 House seats and 1 Senate seat. Because currently, Senate is 50-50, with Apni Kamala ji's vote deciding in favor of Democrats. In the House, they have only 8-seat majority, Democrats, despite all the 81 million votes for Biden. So this House also is in a very, very technical scenario. But one of the very interesting things that happens in the US election is that 2020 there was the US Census. The census allows redistricting of constituencies, voting constituencies. And in that redistricting, there will be game played by both parties in the states that they are running. And the odds are likelihood that there are certain Republican redistricting will fetch them a couple of votes. So it is a very interesting scenario because a critical election, just as 2020 was, 2022 is equally critical for the US for a variety of reasons. And one of them is the real pathetic display by President Joe Biden and perhaps the weakest ever vice presidential candidate. Even the Democratic Party doesn't want her to become the presidential nominee for the next election. So think about it from that perspective. Republicans have a chance. In a very interesting thing, just as 2020 election was fought on emotion, and Democrats drove the emotion angle very well against Trump and the Republicans, this election will be voted on reasoning and logic because Democrats, based on emotion, have really ruined quite a few things in the country. Quite a few things. Is the economy stupid? The pandemic economy, as it is known, is not going down well. Just to give you a sample of the economy part of it, this country, which was always very proud of its supply chain, stores being full, shopping, the country of shopping, where people always said, even after 9/11, President Bush said, go shop. People said, all Democrats and Republicans, go for shopping, relieve yourself of the stress. Here is a very interesting data that about over 80,000 truck drivers will be having a really shortage here in this country. The supply chain is locked up because the vaccine mandate, and if you are not taking vaccine, then you have to do weekly testing. The truckers' age is what do you call it? Uh, Truckers' age is aging group of people. There are no supply of adequate number of truckers, and as a result of which there is a likelihood of 37% shortage of truck drivers in this country. If you remember, in one of our shows in skills, we had talked about that truck driving is a major supply employment opportunity for those who are qualified. So you are looking at a scenario in the US is very powerful because entire supply chain is affected in the US. And you know what is dangerous? They say that it will take a decade plus more for the public transit to return to pre-pandemic era. Think about it in this country, which is three times larger than India with three time zones. If you have a trucker problem, your supply chain and economy thus gets affected. At the moment, we all know the gas shortage, gas prices going up, egg prices going up, milk prices going up. It has already imposed heavy taxation on people by churning out more money. It's not going down well. And Biden's approval rating, I don't think he cares a lot anything about it, because for him, it is important to win the vote count than the ballot count, than the poll counting. So, he's going on those basis. And we are looking at a very powerful scenario. Quite a few things have happened. And one of the things which they say is that in this election cycle in 2022, almost unanimously, everybody says Republicans have a chance of winning both House as well as Senate, because the margin required to win is very narrow. And the mood is against President Biden. It's an all-time low. He has not inspired. He has done nothing. He has said nothing that will inspire people to vote. And very interesting data that in every state where Biden won by less than 10% or 7% point, Republicans have a fair shot. Those are toss-ups. The bad sign is that in Virginia, where Biden won by over 10 percentage points, the Republican, Mr. Youngkin, won the governor's election. That's not a good sign for Democrats. And I said, while Biden won on sentiment and emotion, Republicans will win back on reason and logic.
Virginia is a blue state, isn't it?
It is. It is a blue state. That's why the Republican governor winning is a big deal there. Yeah. And even in
Yes,
New Jersey, which
I
is a
don't
blue
remember
state,
when Republican won Virginia, the governorship.
they just won. No? Mr. Youngkin won there.
Yeah, they won it this time. I don't know
Yeah.
when they won it
Ah, yeah,
last.
that's right. Yeah, it was long, 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 long ago, which doesn't figure in the history maps as well.
Yes. No, Virginia could be called a deep blue state. So if a deep
Yes.
blue state is giving you a Republican governor, then I think definitely, I think the next we can hope for New York to give a Republican governor. Though they
Republican.
did have a Republican governor not too long ago.
Yes. Yes. It was Mr. Pataki, and but the important part, New York City had two terms of Giuliani as the mayor, and uh, you know, 2 terms of this one Bloomberg. In the third term, he became an independent. Uh, but New Jersey was a close call as well, by a very thin margin. The Democrat squeaked past. So that's what is important. Yeah.
So I just want you to update us on the Biden Kamla ratings before we move on to the major issues that seem to be dogging this present presidency.
I'm impressed that you want to settle the Biden Kamala Harris situation before you go to other bigger topics. So I think this is a big topic by itself.
Oh, no, that issue is almost settled. We go to the other topics which they're messing
That
up.
was, that was a very sweet tongue-in-cheek humor. No, Biden Kamala Harris teaming up, in my opinion, for as many years, is the weakest president VP teaming up. It is important to understand that, because uh, vice presidential candidates are normally weak people. In this particular instance, Kamala Harris withdrew from presidential election because the Democratic Party herself did not want her to be the president. Why they allowed her to be the vice presidential candidate, I do not know. But Kamala Harris has not done herself any favor. In these moments of leadership, you show your leadership because you are technically always a breath away from presidency. Like Lyndon Johnson became president after Kennedy's assassination. So what I'm trying to say is that she is not doing herself any favor. Biden appointed her as the immigration to check the border. She didn't even visit there. On the contrary, when she was asked in the TV interview, she said, "Oh, I haven't gone to Europe either." Now, that shows remarkable immaturity or trying to be smart attitude, which doesn't go well when you are under heavy scrutiny. For every word matters. And her laughter is very bombastic, sounds great at times, but when you don't laugh at a right moment and you laugh at everything, then it becomes a matter of a joke. So what is part of her important personality trait, which was much liked when she announced her candidacy, is now looking like a ridiculous display of unsentimental or untimely humor. That's the challenge which Kamala Harris is facing. And she's not, and they are looking like as if they are not even working together. So the question is, she is trying to distance herself from the falling rating of President Biden, which is an all-time low, as the saying goes here. It is an all-time low. And Biden doesn't seem to be caring about it much at all. So the question here is very simple, that Biden and Kamala Harris, I don't think even they talk every now and then. This is a pure speculation. But it is a very, very sad scenario of the U.S. leadership right now. There is the U.S. leadership on global agenda also is missing, because there is no leadership at this point in time, unfortunately. Now
So
we can switch to
what are
important
the ratings?
ratings. Are Biden is running at 43% or 42%, which is an all-time low. Kamala Harris is running in not in teens but early 20s kind of a thing, which is very, very
That's really young.
that's she's regaining youth in a very different perspective. It's very
I just want to look at the global scenario. Let's discuss the energy situation, because as long as Trump was there, he ensured that the frackers kept pumping,
Mhm.
and you always had a very good US inventory and US supply, so the energy prices were always moderated. Now, what's the problem with Biden?
The
Why
total
isn't shale oil moderating the global energy prices?
the reason is very simple. The Democrats have been wedded to the climate change agenda, and they have always been talking about fossil fuels going out. Biden is on record, Kamala Harris is on record, trying to shut down the fossil fuel industry. And somewhere along the line, as Mr. Al Gore had said about the inconvenient truth of as many years ago while flying all the jets all the time, is the fact that लगता है आपकी खांसी यहाँ पहुंच गई न्यूयॉर्क, मुझे भी होने लगा anyway. So
This is maybe something new which gets transmitted through visual
electronic,
medium, electronic visual medium.
right. So the point is that they have always been wedded to that scenario of climate, of you know fossil fuel being out. So what was the first act which Biden did? That the Canadian pipeline which was coming, he shut it down. He didn't care for 11,000 people losing jobs. So suddenly that US had gained energy independence is gone. Not only that, he allows Russians to build the pipes elsewhere. I mean, depending on whatever political arrangements are there. So, and people in the US are paying a heavy price for that. In a pandemic economy where people's incomes were hurt, driving is a key element of American life. because you drive 50 miles, 70 miles just for asking, because that's the distance you need to cover. So lower gas prices were always a big help. Now one can argue that with the technology of all the kind of technologies have come about, people may not have to travel to the offices of XYZ places. But it doesn't matter, because the people who have to drive to work are not the white collar workers alone, but there are a lot of blue collar workers who are not in the high income bracket. So higher gas prices that Mr. Biden is trying to bring about, the alternative fuels and everything else that they're trying to do, is hurting every American at the moment. And a question has come about, because when politicians talk about we are doing this for our children and grandchildren, people are saying that I don't have a grandchild. What are you doing for me? So the question is very important here. When I don't have a grandchild, I'm not even married, I don't have a child of my own. Why am I bothered about my grandchild when I'm dying here? If I'm gone, if I'm not able to afford a wife and a child, what's the point in doing something for somebody who doesn't exist anymore? So people have begun to see that they are being exploited on sentimental reasons. That's a conversation you can't win, that I'm doing this for your grandchildren. So those who have grandchildren will be nostalgically accepting of that argument, but not many people are buying into that anymore, because they are saying that if I'm not there tomorrow, why am I going to be worried about something that I do not even know about? What are you doing for me? This is a country that has taught the American slang is what's in it for me, and people have begun to ask that question: what's in it for me? So whatever you are doing, you are screwing me. That is the famous American slang as well. That you are screwing me here and telling me to not yell and call for help for XYZ reasons which are not so valid anymore. So that's what is critical here in the energy part of it, that in trying to bring about better climate change and comply with Paris Accord, somewhere along the line the Democratic Party is exposing itself beyond a particular time. And that's what is important here to figure out. For rest of the people are beginning to say that. And it is showing up, because 46 to 41%, all media, all media and all major publications have begun to say that by a margin of 46 to 41, Republicans will regain the House and the Senate. This is all over the world we're talking about.
Yeah, this happened in 2014 last, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it did.
And that made Obama a lame duck president for the better part of the remaining 2 years.
Oh, yes. Whenever the president loses the Senate and the House, he then becomes a puppet, or what is known as a lame duck, because your legislative agendas are not going to go through. And that's why Obama very fearlessly, very boldly, very brazenly said, I will live by executive orders. And he issued a lot of executive orders, including the famous DACA that he passed, which he said that I know that legally I'm wrong, but I'm doing it nevertheless. Funnily enough, when Republicans challenged it, then the Supreme Court, led by John Roberts, a Republican nominee, continued to uphold that. So this is a U.S. system. Sometimes it takes time to understand the nuances of it, because John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the United States, who was brought in by a Republican, he's more left of center than right of center. So you never know the proclivities, how they come about and how they change.
Okay. So that is about the energy policies, and there's very little being done on China also.
देखिए साहब, ऐसा है कि चाइना में there were only two world leaders who took on China head on. That was Donald Trump and Narendra Modi ji. These are the two democratic leaders who took China head on. And you know what has happened. China has played its card. The Democratic Party are totally sold out. American big businesses are sold out in China for profit margins. And China has understood that geopolitical game very well. because that's where it is critical for the rest of the world to understand. Two things have happened in this country. One of them is that China has entered the entire political debate and dialogue. The socialism part, the communism part, Bernie Sanders' honeymoon in Russia as many years ago is materializing here right now. So effectively, people joke about it that Bernie Sanders, if he were the presidential candidate against Trump, he would have lost. But Biden, pretending to be a moderate, he has bought into the Sanders press agenda, and Sanders is running the U.S. economy. Look at how the famous foursome, as I would say foursome, I would say the quad, AOC quad, how they are dictating the terms. That is the issue that is beginning to emerge. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That Chinese have begun to capture this entire process in such aggressive ways. US was never prepared for that. There was a definite amount of gullibility, and there was a definite amount of naivete on the part of the American public, that they did not understand the geopolitical play by China that China did. And they played upon the profit motive of America, that every single American item, from your beach benches and even the 9/11 pins, are made in China. So China has gotten into every household, whether you are wearing a shirt, pant, suit, tie, or whatever. They have gotten into. So if you hurt China, you know that you are going to hurt yourself as well. The only part of the China thing is the political dynamics. The Hunter Biden story, billions of dollars and millions of dollars trading hands. So it's very simple. Chinese have played the Democratic Party very well. So much so that one of the prominent Democrat House guy was having a girlfriend, Chinese girlfriend, who was a spy for 4 years. Think about it. And nothing happened. The Democratic Party leadership did nothing about it, as if it was just a normal happening. And that was Nancy Pelosi's own favorite guy from California. So the point here is that they are not able to address the Wuhan virus, which I call it as it is. They are not able to address the question of how American National Institute of Health funded the human mice testing of Wuhan virus. That's why you notice now that two different strains have emerged in France and a couple of other countries after Omicron. So the challenge here is very simple, that people are sick and tired. So whatever they blame the Trump for, they are going to have to live with it. And yesterday, US crossed 1 million cases, new cases of Omicron. And that too, when people have had double vaccine and the booster. I'm one of them. So we are now living in a fear कि 7 दिन का quarantine करना पड़ेगा अगर ये हुआ तो. Where was the clarion call, given that once the vaccines are out, Biden had said, I will drive out the coronavirus? Where is it gone? So the trust element also has sunk very low. So the Democratic Party is actually holding a challenge that it will have very difficult justifying. And that is the reason why they want to do away with filibuster and other rules, so that they can bring about election law changes, that they can declare Washington D.C. as a separate state with 2 senators, which will be permanently Democrat, and declaring Puerto Rico as a state where they will have another 2 senators. So Republicans are in trouble if this bill were to pass. The only hope is that Joe Manchin, the Democratic senator, who is not buckling down under the intense Democratic Party pressure to bring him around. He has been called names, So when Romney and others, couple of them, were anti-Trump, the same Democratic Party were calling them as patriots. But when Joe Manchin and the Arizona senator is opposing Build Back Better, they are being called traitors by the same time. So, you have a scenario here which plays out very well. And thanks to the era of technology, Sanjay ji, same Chuck Schumer, who is now going to have a vote to do away with filibuster rule, was the one who in 2005 and later was berating and crying and speaking at the top of his voice that Republicans trying to do away with filibuster will be the end of democracy in the United States. Now he's doing the same thing here. So people see that now. The farce or the duplicity comes out in the open. That's why I am very happy to recall that when I wrote an article in 10 years ago, that because of technology, politicians can't hide anymore. You can't lie anymore because whatever you say or do gets exposed. So we now know the true history of everybody. So Senator Chuck Schumer can't hide behind the argument, oh, things have changed. No, sir, nothing has changed. You are playing politics, and I dare say that.
Right. And of course, you mentioned the failure on the COVID front.
Right.
And how probable is this passing of this bill? And does it require any special majority, or does it pass only through simple majority? About creating extra senators.
The probability is run something like this. There are certain critical bills that require 60 votes in the Senate. That's called the filibuster. It is designed so that no bill is passed in a haste and a hurry. There is more debate, there is more arguments, and people come to their senses to say, okay, it is right or wrong. What they are trying to do now is to do away with that requirement. And doing away with that requirement requires simple majority. They don't need 60,
Okay.
you know. And with Kamala Harris, that if that particular thing is done away with, then then they can do it. Silver lining and the hope is that this is the very essence of US Constitution democracy. So Joe Manchin will not go for that. It just requires one person voting this way or that way. I suspect that all Republicans will be united. And there's a very interesting precedence for that, Sanjay ji, and for all the viewers. There was a time when Democrats enjoyed the majority in both House and Senate, and they did away the filibuster rule for several activities, including appointment of judges. At that time, Mitch McConnell had warned them that beware. Harry Reid, who recently passed away, Harry Reid had said, we will rule the Senate for a long number of years to come. Lo and behold, they lost the next election. And that's the reason why Trump was able to nominate so many judges that Republican Democrats Party will rue the day that they let it go. So whatever goes around comes around. So at some point in time, it may take a little bit of a time longer, but there is an element that will make Democrats think that when we are doing as you sow, so you reap. तो उसका असर होगा. And it may take a little longer time because it's not easy to overcome a margin of 4 Senate seats, but particularly when the world is going left all the way and a lot of money is being pumped into that system. So the question here is very simple. It can happen, but I think even this particular vote Chuck Schumer is putting to vote is trying to challenge every Democrat to vote so that they know that they will all vote 50 and Republicans 50, and Kamala Harris's vote will allow that to happen. And they're making it for only the constitutional change, which I think there will be certain Democrats will not vote for it. If it happens, well, this country can say goodbye to democracy in the way it is run today. It will be a single party rule for a long number of years, unless a new president comes, Republican, and he changes the whole thing through an executive fiat. You are looking at a chaotic situation. Yes.
Okay. And let's talk about some foreign policy issues and the mishandling of certain foreign policy issues by Joe Biden. And instead of focusing on China, he again seems to be focusing on the USSR again. And even though Trump wanted to normalize ties with the USSR, he wasn't allowed to by this establishment, which I think is heavily democratic anyway.
Mm.
And now they seem to have lit fires in the neighborhood of US, in the neighborhood of Russia, and they don't seem to be able to measure up to the willpower of Putin. And Putin has amassed troops on the border of Ukraine, and he is also looking at what USSR is doing with the Baltic countries, and they seem to be headed for a warlike situation in which the West doesn't seem to be willing to, or doesn't seem to have the either the intent or nor the willpower to commit to a direct kinetic war. So where is he headed? What does he want?
This is a classic case of posturing. It is a total posturing. You are absolutely right. War for Ukraine, the world is not going to go to war for Ukraine. Let's put it that way. And I don't mean any disrespect for the country. Russia's angle is only one. With the virtual disappearance of the Eastern Bloc, which was Russian-owned kind of thing, CENTO, NATO ke khilaf, NATO and CENTO were the two, warring scenarios in Europe. That doesn't exist anymore. So Russia is isolated. And Europeans played a better politics to isolate Russia. And all that Russia is saying that you cannot have a NATO frontier at my doorstep. Why must Europeans force that on Russia? Is just to decimate Russia as a power. But what is critical here is that entire Europe is kept warm because the Russians supply the gas, and the entire Germany is warmed up because of Russian energy. So the question here is, can Russia tighten the bolt? And it can. And Russia doesn't want Ukraine to be becoming the NATO outpost right at its frontier. So all the missile deployment and everything becomes closer to home, whereas it's not closer to other countries, the original NATO members. And that there are countries who are becoming a sacrificial lamb into the war that if were to happen. So this is posturing. It will go on. It's like the China incursion policy. They capture 1 square mile of area and they say, it is mine. We go and argue, then they negotiate that I will take time to vacate it. They put their outpost. So it is an incursion policy. It is what we are seeing happening in Ukraine and that area is just posturing. I don't think anybody is going to go for war there. Eventually, there will be a settlement, and Russia will also push. Putin is not weak. He's an ex-KGB guy. He knows the machinations inside. He knows people inside out, and he still has his head in place, and his mind is working well. And he knows he's not forgotten. He's not the guy who has forgotten that USSR was dismembered by the clever play of American and the Vatican power. He has not forgotten that, and he will do everything to protect the Russian interest. So this is, I think, in my opinion, living in America, being an American, this is not a good sign. If you try to belittle or humiliate a superpower of its own kind, then you are driving him in a corner, and nobody likes to be in a corner. And I think the entire Europe understands that part of it very well, that you cannot take Russia for granted.
Quite right, and that's actually something that I've never understood. I think I've shared it with you also a couple of times. That the global scenario, as it is unfolding right now, would actually dictate that uh, Russia-America relationship became normalized, and China became the other.
Right.
But typical establishment of the US, they just seem intent on Russia, Russia, and more Russia, because the military industrial complex doesn't want to let go of Russia as the other.
Yes. And there is very interesting part is that military establishment is very true. They are the traditional enemies, the Cold War, the Hot War, whatever. Although US and Russia will never have a war direct fight ever. They will choose some arena where to have a fight, but they will not have a direct fight ever. But there was a very, very good thinker called Stephen Cohen. I liked him. He wrote book. He wrote several books, and he was consulted by every president in the United States on Russian policy. And in an award ceremony in California where I was there, he made a statement that I don't agree with Trump. I'm not a Republican, but this man does make sense when he talks about becoming friends with Russia or improving relationship with Russia, because that's the only logical outcome. To beat up the Russia, band that Russia is evil, and even Reagan called it Russia as an evil empire. It's not in the interest of United States. Unfortunately, he's no more, but his book is brilliant. I would certainly urge you to read it. I'll send you the name of the book. Do read it. And he says that how the military-industrial complex and how particularly the Democrats, unfortunately, are keeping the Russian bogey alive. It's very interesting. And particularly when Mr. Sanders was the one who had a Russia honeymoon. He celebrated his marriage honeymoon in Moscow. So it's a joke here about that. So maybe his dreams are coming true now. Honeymoon dreams are coming true in the Russian context here. But it is very tragic. I think posturing apart, one of the key elements is global dominance. And what I'm witnessing is that American global dominance is shrinking. And new power
I think
modes
it's
are
entirely
emerging.
due to the stupidity of the American
Yes.
military establishment and the academia.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, you look at it this way. There are two elements. I've shared this with you before, and I'm saying this again. In America, by the way, a large amount of sentiment is swinging against China and against Islamic rule, because both of them seem to have captured the American imagination of the left and Democratic Party. Democratic Party, despite being Democrats, are appearing to be more fascists. Think about it like this, that today you and I can be banned by Twitter. Arti Tikku, Robert Spencer, their accounts were banned by Twitter for a while. Arti Tikku refused to buckle under there. So, whereas none of the tirade that comes from anybody else against you and I is ever shut down. People are now reacting to this. It's not going down well, because now this country loves its freedom of speech. They allow flag burning, जो हमारे country में ban है. You can't burn an Indian flag. It is an offense of a kind. Here it passes off as a freedom of speech under First Amendment. So the question here is very simple. The country that loves its freedom to the extent that it does, if you are going to cut it down, people are watching. Sadly, there is no alternate to Twitter and Facebook, but I suppose technology is a marvelous thing. Very soon something will come about. It depends on how that gets.
That reminds me of what's happening to Truth Social, the Trump.
He's done it. If they were trying to, they were trying to. The Congress was going to pass a legislation to ban Trump even from floating his technology company. He is doing it. I think the whole problem there is that amount of money required to create an alternate to Amazon Web Service, AWS, and the web hosting part of it. Because if his thing is hosted on AWS and other channels, he can still be shut down. So most likely, there is a very concerted effort going to create an alternate to AWS and other hosts, servers that will be able to host an alternate channel. But he's working very hard on that.
Okay. So that's a lot of interesting topics. Anything else that you have in mind right now that you would like to talk about?
The one thing which I definitely want to share with all the audience is that what I had said in 2020, and this is particularly true, it would be absolutely unfair on my part not to comment upon what happened in India today in Punjab with reference to Prime Minister's motor car that was going around. I had mentioned there, and I'm on record with you, Sanjay ji, that what happened in 2020 election in America, that brigade, that toolkit is coming to India in full force. I had then said that there will be three elements that Modi ji will be attacked on: human rights violations. Everything that will do it will be human rights violences, minority abuses, and any economic change that he brings about will leave some group unhappy and to incite that group. We have seen all of it play. And somewhere along the line, right or wrong, I'm not commenting on that. Modi ji handled those situations at a personal loss of honor and prestige. He did not kill a single farmer agitator. He did not create or incite anything. People, some of us were unhappy about that, his silence. But think about it today, you can't blame him for killing anybody or doing something that would have uh, led to a situation. That brigade is coming to India. 2022 and 2024 is equally critical. And I dare say that. I dare say for all us Hindus, particularly. It is critical because we are reckoned as a threat. So what I'm trying to say to you is that become solidified. And my mool mantra for that is, if somebody is doing a good job, let them do it. Don't question that. Collaborate, cooperate, coordinate, and mobilize. That is the only answer to these elements who are out to destabilize us in the name of freedoms. That's very important for us to remember. It is critical for us to do that. And I think every Indian, and now I will say every Indian, needs to worry about it, regardless of your tone, color, craze, everything else. We are under vicious attack. Think about it from the Islamophobia bill that is going on here. Senator Booker has introduced the Senate version of that. Rajiv Malhotra ji wrote a very nice letter to him to reconsider this entire scenario. He didn't. The question here is, it's very cleverly played upon that apparently this entire Islamophobia bill is based on the anti-Semitic bill that the Jews introduced in the US. And that's the rule exists. But think about it. For us, for you and I and those who are watching, must think about it. Jews were killed and brutalized. And there was evil things that they did not go killing anybody. In this particular instance, isn't it bizarre that the people who are killing are asking for favor? That let me kill and don't call me a killer. Think about it. I was part of a debate competition, a speech on Gandhi, where 19 school children were there. This is a very important pointer. 19 school children from age 8 to 12th grader. They participated in that debate. More than 50% of the kids addressed Gandhi's murder as done by a Hindu. And at the end of the end of the speech, end of the debate, I said that I was very touched by one mention that all of you talked about a Hindu nationalist killing Gandhi. But did you ever ask, or does anybody ask, who was the killer? What was the religion of the killer of Abraham Lincoln, or John Kennedy, or Robert Kennedy, or Martin Luther King, or who almost killed Ronald Reagan? You never ask the religion of those guys. You never ask the religion of those people who are doing terrorist acts and killing people around the world. On the contrary, we say that not everybody is a killer from that faith. But one Hindu guy who paid the price of his act, who acted as a lone wolf, did for his own reasons and justifications, he paid the price as per law. Why entire Hindu community has to be blamed, or do we have to carry the proverbial cross of one man's act? Think about it. And I left the audience, the young men and women, to think about it. If we don't ask the religion of the true assassins, so my thought process going forward for all Indians is Get real, get real. And if our freedoms are being abused by others, we need to call them out. We need to call them out, and I applaud you and myself for doing that. We are I'm going to be a little brash about it. Yes, we are trying to do that, but we need the response of every viewer who is listening to us, that we are only two, but two, one to the power of n has a huge power. Let's become one to the power of n to save India and save ourselves, because this time will not come back again.
Right. And with that, I think we can move into the question answer round. Before that, I have to request everybody to please like the share, to like the video, share it around, and also to visit our description and support us and to follow us.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Mithilesh Kumar, it appears that Americans are still in Cold War mindset and treat Russia as an enemy, but do not recognize China as a bigger threat. Views.
I think they do recognize China as the bigger threat. If you remember, there was a debate between Obama and Romney, in which Obama ridiculed, Romney on the foreign policy element many times. Issue is very important. Americans are now weakened because, China has entered the homes of every American, whether it is a shirt, pant, beach benches, or anything else. They manufacture everything else. So think about it from that perspective. China has entered the house. Now everybody looks at their shirt, it's made in China. Look at China, how it is bullying the rest of the world for attending the Chinese the Winter Olympics that are being held there. Shouldn't there be a total ban or based on Wuhan virus and Omicron part of it? But yes, you are right that Americans are still holding on to the Cold War because they have not had a war and they have not won against Russia. They have dismantled Russia to some extent by, USSR is no longer existing, but China is a bigger threat to United States, and people have begun to realize that.
Well, yes, I think after the Second World War, did the US win any war at all?
No, absolutely not. Unless you call that bullying of Iraq or the decimation of Iraq. It happened, that Iraq was a recovery of Vietnam debacle, you can say so.
Okay, next. Mithil Panchal, Elizabeth Warren would be a better VP.
Listen, I can argue and I need not argue. So, Elizabeth Warren is a confirmed left winger. Yeah, I mean, you could be right as well, Mithulji, because there is no difference between Elizabeth and Kamala Harris. Elizabeth Warren. So, better is a dangerous word here. I would say, well, who knows who would have been a better VP?
Okay, next. Sri Harsha. So, what about Islamophobia bill? Will it become a law?
Uh, it is feared. It is feared that it might pass into with Senate unless and until uh, some Democrats change track. The Islamist group of people are trying to persuade. They are spending big monies to persuade a couple of Republicans to vote for it. But that assures even one or two slipping away from that side. Whether it will become a law, President Biden has to sign, and I think he will be a man in a hurry to sign this. But it will also go through a constitutional challenge because you can't draw bills in the US Constitution against other religions favoring one because all religions are equal. So there is a lot to go yet, and somewhere along the line, the anti-Islamophobia bill, people are becoming more organized, And but it will succeed or not, we don't know yet. It will require all Republicans voting against it, just as it happened in the House, and a few, just one Democrat senator saying no. So it's still far from becoming a law. It will be voted sometime in April. It may get tossed. We do not know yet. But believe it or not, the lobby is so much for passing this bill.
Kunal Joshi, pranams are off topic, but I've sent you an email regarding a new OTT platform I'm working on and needed your support. Haven't heard back. What is the appropriate place to communicate with you? So if you're talking about me, then you have the WhatsApp number below. So that's going there on that ticker. And that's the one that you can communicate on. And if you're asking Vibhuti Ji, then Vibhuti Ji might answer.
I do not remember seeing this message from you, Kunal. So if it is for me, let's talk about it. Or if I don't know something, I can't give you an advice. But only after I know what you have said, then we can definitely talk about it.
Okay, next. Achintya 69 2007, prominent French physicist Serge Jallam questioned climate change theory. He says historical data on climate change patterns is insufficient. Jallam is one of the very few pro Trump scientists.
You know, the science has a major objection. There is another Swedish professor who also has been a champion of saying that the climate change argument is bogus. And he was part of a Swedish independent institute, but the Swedish government froze his grant and threw him out. His thought process is that we have to determine the priority. So, you know, he has a very defined theory about it, and I like him. I agree with him that unless and until we prioritize what is important, just talking about this is not fair enough. People talk about the population replacement theory, and I'm a layman. I'm asking a question. I'm hiding behind the famous adage, there are no stupid questions, only stupid answers. And I just thought about it one morning. I got up. If only the world population were 4 billion instead of 8 billion, probably won't be talking about the climate change, because climate change is all about the use of Mother Earth's resources. So the question here is, yes,
Majorly by the Western countries.
yes, exactly. So the question here is that, is this really true? Climate pattern is changing. Yes, definitely something is happening. I've lived in two cities in India which are air-conditioned cities, which were air-conditioned cities, Pune and Bangalore, where you never had to run fan at least 3 or 4 times, more than 3 to 4 times a year. Today, you can't run a life without having an air conditioner cooling arrangements. That's the point which I'm saying. That something is happening. What exactly is driving it, I do not know. But I think population growth and use of Earth's resources is a major player here.
Okay, next. Mithilesh Kumar again. No, this question has
Yes, sir.
already been taken.
Yeah. How
Neeraj Mishra. How Hindus can collaborate, coordinate when we are taught to be patient and achieve best careers. Because to achieve collectiveness must jeopardy career.
Mishraji, that's not quite correct. I mean, just because you are told to be patient and achieve best careers doesn't mean you don't collaborate and coordinate on things that are important, right? Yeah, career finding is good. Even people here do that. Career is important. But there is a need at some point in times that we must not become, which is a famous word called lotus eaters or shatranj ke khilari. A very important parallel of lotus eaters would be shatranj ke khilari. दुनिया जल रही है और लेकिन हम बैठे शतरंज खेल रहे हैं. Somebody else will do it. That's something very important for us to think about. That somebody else will do it, मुझे नहीं करना है, पहले आप. That is what strikes us negatively. हम सब सोचते हैं कि कोई करेगा, हम क्यों करें. somebody will do it. That attitude must go. So and we become very critical of somebody doing well. That's another element of our life which is very hurtful, to use a very simple language here. That's what is important here, is that we have to support those who are doing something. Let them do it. If you agree with it, let them do it. If you don't agree with it, go and help somebody who is doing something about that matter. That's what I mean by collaborate and coordinate, mobilize, and do this. This is very, very important for us to do that. Calling people name, galiyan dena is the easiest thing in the world. To be a critic is the easiest thing in the world. It's like the movie critics. कितना आसान होता है मूवी का क्रिटिक रिपोर्ट लिखने में, मूवी बनाने में क्या हालत होता है उसकी तो सोचिए पहले. So the initiatives when somebody takes, join the initiative, support the initiative to the extent that you agree, or if you don't agree, walk away. But don't try to kill somebody or defame somebody who is doing something good.
Okay, Mitul Panchal is asking why big tech oligarchy is taking everything in their hands without getting elected. Aren't they violating democracy? Joe Rogan, Robert Malone issue.
I can't agree more with you, Mitulji, because it is, that's what I said to you earlier on, that people are now beginning to ask this question. Why shouldn't we ask this question of Parag, who is the Twitter chief? What is the basis of justification for Aarti Tiku's account being suspended? Because she pointed out to a threat to her brother's life by some people? Or why Robert Spencer's account be suspended? Why must Priya Kulkarni's account be suspended because she pointed out a collage of things that Muslims were saying, Muslim leaders were saying? Why there is a one-sided treatment of people who are saying something against an obvious element? We have to become angry about it. You don't have to become angry young man like Amitabh Bachchan of Janjeer, but you can. We all have the right to have a freedom of speech to express ourselves and demand. Demand. I'm going to send a tweet to Parag. Do you even know what you are doing? That will be my simple tweet. Do you even know what you are doing? If we don't ask, then we lose out. That's what my point is. Thank you.
Achintyan asks, Elizabeth Warren's son-in-law is from Meerut, so maybe that's why Indians like her more.
Maybe he's a communist. There is no need to like her for that. We do not know that. So, for example, AOC's advisor was a Banerjee, who was a Marxist. Just because he was an Indian doesn't mean we have to support AOC.
Quite right. Next. Neeraj Mishra, our American Senate don't know what they are doing.
When I was attending a major investment company seminar, in that they had said, the CEO of that seminar had said that, or the company had said, never underestimate the politicians. They are not stupid. They act stupid. In this particular instance, I think American Senate, Democrats particularly, are acting stupid. They know what they are doing, but they're doing it for a different reason. Because in politics, winning seats is important. If you do not win the election, nothing else matters. And they are, at this point in time, pandering, indulging in the same old technique that India and Hindus are notorious for. Pandering and appeasement gets you nowhere. That disease has afflicted American politics. And the Senate, American politicians are in the grip of that scenario right now.
Next. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you all viewers. Thank you Vibhuti Ji. Jai Hind. Vande Mataram.
And congratulations for completing the show in a flat 1 hour time. So, Vande Mataram.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't